habe את אביך habe את אביך ואת אמך כהבא את אביך ואת אמך כבד את אביך ואת אמך. Hi, everybody out there. Oh my God, it's like so early in the morning. I can't even believe it. What is it? It's like 2:25 in the morning. Can you believe it? Well, it's not exactly 2:25 for us, but my name is Naomi Less. I'm one of the founding ritual leaders of Lab Shul.
And I'm Basya Schechter, Chazan Basya Schechter, and I am the cantor at Romamu, New York City, and also the musical and spiritual director of Romamu Brooklyn at this point. And we're really happy to be here at 2:25. I was thinking that this is usually, if you think back 2 years, this is the time that we had to do our second feeding in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And as you can see, the light is on in my room. There is sunlight cascading behind Basya's head. We are filming this session because we are
in Brazil. No.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I were in Brazil. Now we're moms of toddlers. That's the truth of the matter. And we are doing the best we possibly can in this moment of quarantine to participate and to contribute and to learn together and to share learnings with you in the way that we can. And so that's not an apology. This is where we are. And I hope you're doing the best that you can too.
I think it's in the spirit, kabed means to honor. And you always have to honor what is. I think that's where we're at. We're honoring what is. And I think all of us, even before we start the session, it's like, where are you right this minute? And how could you honor right now, this minute, how you're feeling, what you're observing, all the Torah that you're learning. And right now on the climb to Sinai, you're right here at this fifth commandment.
Right in the intersection. We'll talk about that in a second. So what we want to invite you to do, even though you can't interact with us, you're in a community right now, and we want you to be able to interact with each other. And so we really do want you to use that chat function or whatever kind of interface function that you're watching from to talk to each other and to share and to create your own sacred circle of sharing. There'll be points where we want to invite you, if you write or if you meditate or if you draw or whatever, we want to invite you to write things down that come to you, or to make a note to yourself, and to go into your own exploration too. We want this to be as engaging and participatory, and we'll kind of guide you for those moments along the way.
And also honor that you may be prone on your back, or is it supine? I always confuse the two. You might be like just subliminally absorbing all these teachings in this kind of semi-conscious way. And that's okay too.
That's beautiful.
Both options.
Yes, and both and. Everybody's just here right now. So we have the deep honor of investigating and deconstructing and reconstructing and delving into the beauty and the complexity of the fifth commandment, which is about honoring your parents. And so what we thought we would do, just to take you through a little bit of what's coming up, we're going to look closely at, there are actually two versions, and we're going to look closely at both versions, the one from Exodus chapter 20 and the one from Deuteronomy chapter 5. And we're going to unpack that a little bit. Basya's going to take us through that. And then we're going to look at like what are some of the roots of why we even have this law in our top 10 codes. And then we're going to look at what people had to say about this commandment, meaning like what does it actually mean to respect or honor? And we'll see where the conversation goes. There'll be some music interspersed along the way, and then we'll come together at the end and hopefully have a moment of healing because this might bring up some stuff. That's for sure. So Basya, do you want to take us through what each of these versions of this fifth commandment are?
Sure. So in Exodus 20, the version is Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha lema'an ya'arichun yamecha al ha'adama asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha. Lach, sorry. Honor your father and your mother that you may long endure on the land that God has assigned you. And so there is very clearly a command to honor. That's the commandment, to honor your father first and then your mother. And why? Because there's a causality. Because you want, so you can have a long life of days on this earth, on this land, al Adamah, that the Divine One has given you. In Deuteronomy 5, the version has just a little addendum to the version in Exodus. And that's Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha ka'asher tzivcha Adonai Elohecha lema'an ya'arichun yamecha uleman yitav lach al ha'adama asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. So here the piece that's added is leman yitav lach. In order for it should be good for you. Not only that your days should be lengthened, but you should do this because it should be good for you. And as soon as I read this, the law that came up to me, the same language came up for me in learning about Shiluach Hakan or Shiluach Hakan. When you send away the mother bird, when you want to take the eggs of the banim, of the children. And I remember this song growing up, just the chorus of it, like, Shalech teshalech et ha'en, et habanim tikach lach, leman yitav lach leyorech et yamim. So that's a song I grew up with for the Shiluach HaKan. And so immediately, I mean, learning Torah through the lens of songs and melodies, it's always easy to recall them when you get older.
Basya, can you translate the whole line for the Shulach?
Oh, sure. You have to send away the mother, and then you could take the children. And I think it's the eggs of the children.
Right.
And then it's the same language, pretty much the same language for the reward of doing that commandment, which is leman yitavlach, so that it should be good for you, le'orech et yamim, to also lengthen your days. So the same reward for for sending away the mother so that she doesn't have to witness the fact that her children are being taken away, is the same reward in the second version of the commandment to honor your mother and your father.
And so that's, I mean, and I love that you made that connection. Of course, like, you know, we live music, so immediately we are always thinking, oh, what song does that remind me of, right? So, and it's really interesting what you're bringing up about like what's the reward? The reward is that like literally it says that you may endure long on the land, right? So endure. So it's about this present moment of life. And Basya, you brought up some really interesting commentary that we talked about, and I'm wondering if you share with our assembled here, with all of our friends here.
I think, just in terms of rewards, a lot of rewards for a lot of the commandments have to do with what you're going to receive in the world to come. That, you know, you have olam haba, that you should have an afterlife that's good for you, whatever that means. And here, this is the rewards right here in this time on this land and at this moment. So, and to increase your moments, so you can have more moments.
And so that's interesting of like why that piece here, like thinking about the bird, but also like thinking about this particular commandment of honoring your parents, that it will, you will be rewarded in this life, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like you have to help them, whatever the honoring is, we'll get to that. Whatever honoring is, you have to do that because it's going to help you right now.
Right now. Right. And it's a transition of like also the now. It's also we're also positionally we've Ani Hashem Elokecha lo yeh lechem elokim acherim. You should I am the Lord your God. Don't have another God. Like don't take
All
God's name
titles, right? No,
and
no
honor.
painted images.
It's all very divine. It's a lot of divination, like being in the channel of divine, and then it's to observe the Shabbat, which is sacred space and sacred time, and how we enter into sacred relationship. Now we're on this earth, we're in transitioning from our divine mother and father, the Shekhinah and Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and now we're corporealizing them into our own actual parents.
It's really, I mean, we'll get into this, the commentary, but it is sort of interesting, like that everything is like this divine channel connectivity, and then like you get to Shabbat, which feels like it's ethereal in some places. It feels like this is like like Hashel's palace in time, and just what the a state of being is. But there are actually like really practical things in the Torah about what that means,
Mm-hmm.
which is on this earth. Like on this earth, here are the things that you can and cannot do on Shabbat. And then right on the heels of that is like, and your parents are going to be the ones to help you to do that. They're going to teach you these things. And so,
And enforce it.
and be the enforcers. It's true. And speaking of enforcers, so I thought like when you and I were first talking about this, I'm like, how did this even get into the top 10 to begin with? Like the commentators have talked about this, like, you're in that mid place between God and humanity and the human rules and God rules, but that's commentary. But like, is there any like, if we believe that the Torah was redacted, or how these, like, how did five make it to the top 10? How did honoring your parents make it to the top 10? So I did a little research, and I decided to read the whole Hammurabi's code.
How long is it?
It's long. It's really long. And it dates back to 1800 BCE. So it dates back a little bit farther, but um, what we have come to understand is that like the Ten Commandments and a lot of our codes were built off of ancient codes like Hammurabi, and so I did I did like a search, like a find, like a Command F for father, for mother, for honoring, for anything that could possibly be associated after I read the whole thing with this commandment, to see if like, I wonder if we just like lifted this right out, because it would make sense if that's important to the tribes at that time. The only thing I could find in Hammurabi's code was if rule number 195, if a son strike his father, his hands shall be hewn off. I'd like to understand what hewing looks like, but
I think I have an image, and I don't want to have that image, but I think I do.
if a son strikes his father, so meaning, why would a son strike a father? I mean, just, think to yourself, let's, if you want to put in the chat button, why do you think a son would strike a father? I feel like saying,
Yeah.
but I can't see you chatting,
That's
but
that's that's exactly. We could just
yeah.
respond. That's exactly
So
why.
let's hear from Basya. Like, what comes to mind of like, why would a son strike a father?
For me, it's like abuse. If a child's experiencing a father who's constantly hitting the child,
So maybe he strikes back.
strikes back.
Okay.
What
Um,
about you?
what came to me was like, if a son struck a father, it would have to be something that was done to the son so terrible, whether it's abuse or like rejecting them in some way, maybe rejecting their partner if they weren't, matched with somebody, or disinheriting them, things that we have, like, my goodness, like we have a lot of weird preferential stuff with all of our siblings in the Bible. So I could imagine like, what if Esau had like struck Jacob, right? So like there are these like, what do you mean you gave the bless? I am the inheritor. I am the firstborn, you know. So I can imagine if something shifted, maybe that would give cause. But to me, it shows like a level of like something major would have had to happen. And so, you know, and then there are other codes, other Mesopotamian codes from around there. But the reality is here that we have it reflecting back to where this is positioned in the Ten Commandments as a fifth commandment between these divine pieces and the pieces that are on the ground between human beings. Where do parents sit in that hierarchy? And you have God, but you also have your parents, and your parents are like, I mean, it's patriarchal. You know, I mean, I was speaking with Rabbi Amichai about this. You know, it's a patriarchal society, and so your parents are basically they're in loco parentis for God. Like, if God is your parent, then your parents are like, while God is away doing godly things, just like counselors are your parents at camp when your parents aren't with you, your parents kind of become the God figure. Um, and so that level of respect in the chain of like from God to parents to between human beings does make sense to me. Um, but there's a lot of commentary about this, and Basya and I went into like we went there. But maybe we can transition a little bit from coming from this place of, you know, really looking, taking a deep look at, you know, why the top 10 and the ethereal versus the humanity. Maybe we can bring back that nigun and kind of transition us as we get into the rabbis and what they have to say. Am I supposed to sing too? Do one more. Give us one more, Basya.
Okay.
I feel like you are on my facing, you're on my left, and I feel like I should like look this way to talk to you.
Actually, I feel the opposite. I feel like I need to look this way to talk to you.
Okay, so there was this piece too that was brought up because that I brought up with Basya about respecting your parents, but there's another reference to your parents in the Torah that is a little bit different, and it's actually in Leviticus. And the commentators talk about this in the Talmud. And I'm gonna share with you a little bit about what they say. Um, there's an idea that in Leviticus chapter 19, I'm just going to read you these three verses, and this is really about holiness, kedushin, that we are that how do we become holy in our lives? And look what's put right here. Okay, so it says, and Adonai spoke to Moses, Vaydaber Adonai al Moshe Lemor, saying, "Speak to everybody, all the congregation of the children of Israel, right? Deber et kol edat bnei Israel ve'amarta alehem, and say to them." This is a very famous line. There's been a lot of songs written by it. Dan Nichols wrote a very famous line about that. But Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. Ki kadosh ani, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy because I, Adonai, your God, am holy. So those are the first two verses of this chapter. And then the third verse goes like this. Ish imo ve'aviv tira'u. Every person among you, man, woman, everybody, shall tira'u your mother and your father. Oh, sorry, your mother. Sorry. tira'u, your mother, and I'm not going to translate that word yet, and tishmeru ve'et shabtotai tishmeru ani Adonai Elohechem. Okay, imo ve'aviv. So every person among you shall tira'u, your mother and your father, and you shall keep my Shabbat, my Sabbaths. I am Adonai, your God. So that word tira'u is a really interesting word. We spent at Lab Shul, this was kind of our theme for our last High Holy Days. We spent a lot of time kind of unpacking that word yirah, which is most often translated as awe or fear. And that's a really interesting juxtaposition. This comes right in the middle. Okay, if you think about the books of the Torah, the first telling of the Ten Commandments in Exodus, then we have these holiness codes that are in Leviticus, and then we have Numbers. We're in the desert. We're having tabernacle fun. It's a blast. And then we get to Deuteronomy, which is kind of like the reprise in case you missed. Here are the Ten Commandments again. But after the first set of Ten Commandments are given, it says you should fear or awe your father or your mother. And so the commentators say that with repeating this requirement, that this definition of reverence, of kabed, is connected to the Sabbath. So in the first 10 commandments, we have the Sabbath first, keep the Sabbath, and then we have honor. Now we have fear or awe your parents and keep my Sabbaths. So I'm just going to put this to Basya. We haven't discussed this yet, but why do you think the reversal there? What do you think is significant? I feel like I'm on
between mother and father, you mean?
Meaning in Exodus, it says keep the Sabbath, and then it says honor your parents.
Right.
And in Leviticus, it says fear, awe your parents, and keep the Sabbath.
Right.
What comes to you?
Something that comes to me that might not be super related. When you were saying yirah as awe and fear, there's another layer of the yirah. When I grew up thinking about yiras Hashem, it's the awe and fear of God, but it's also this belief. There's all this this foundation of being full of faith, and so I think in this case there's this foundational potential of the faith, the thing that transitions us from the divine to faith in our parents that created us, and then I think there's a home now. There's a home of faith. There's a home of family, and now there's a Shabbat to actually keep within that home. I think in this particular framing, it's also interesting because in I don't know where it falls on that. I know Rambam, the Maimonides, actually codifies the laws and puts an order to them. And in 210 is Kabed et avicha v'et imecha, and then 211 actually is, this fearing, this thing from Leviticus, that's fearing. I don't know where Shabbat falls in that order. So I think there's so many different orders. I think it has to do also with the context. Here is Kadosh, is the Kadoshim, the holiness code. So for some reason within the holiness code, and maybe it's a good opportunity because I was just thrown this, and I know that you guys are much sharper at 2:25 or 2:45 at AM at this point. And so what comes up for you? Why within this holiness code is it more important to land in the relationship between parent? And I think what's interesting here is that the language yira, you should fear, is the same language that's used mostly for God.
Right.
A lot, either fear or love.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back and read every single person's comment after this. I'm so interested in hearing what you have to say. But it is really interesting the level of, and all full candor, Basya and I did have a conversation about one aspect of this of the level of honor and fearing for your parents is such that you get it's a similar punishment and penalty for cursing your parents as it is for cursing God, aka death. And so it makes logical sense then, like why, they think, like the rabbis think of this as really a tribunal, like a parental tribunal. And we talked about, like, you have three components to who made you, right? You owe, like, who made you? And you've got God, and then you've got the seed, and you've got the egg, right? And this is interesting because of, how families work right now and different ways that families are made, right? So, you
That
know,
might be a really good transition to start bringing us into like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, Basya and I have our own stories too around fertility, but like, let's use this biblical code for a second. Like, if you have God, the seed, and the egg, and those are like the ingredients that made you, that you owe to those triumvirate, then it's like if you curse God, you're cursing part of the triumvirate. If you curse your parents, you're also cursing that triumvirate of like creators who made you. So, and it really never tells us to love. It just says yirah and kabed, this heavy honor, this heaviness. Kabed is also heaviness or hardening, like it's tough. It's like there's some weight, right? There's weight to this, and fear and awe is like another piece. And it never says ve'ahavta, which it says about God, ve'ahavta et Adonai, and it also says ve'ahavta
at the
l'reach,
stranger.
right? And ve'ahavta, right, and the stranger as well too.
Your friend and your stranger.
They're not really concerned with you loving your parents, which is an interesting piece that I think, we should look at. What does honoring actually look like? And Abbas, you did bring up Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, who did categorize all of these commandments into 613 positive and negative commandments or mitzvot. And I'm just going to pull up the definition, according to Rambam, of what kabed is supposed to mean. It's very, very technical, okay? Do you have this? Do you want to read it?
No, go for it. Go for it.
So the Talmud talks about this. It says, what constitutes honor? That your parents, you should give them food and drink, clothe and cover them, and bring them inside and take them outside.
This makes it look like that the commandment's really talking to adult children. This doesn't look like it's talking to little kids or even teenagers who can't possibly hold that kind of responsibility for their parents. So, and I think from this kind of definition and this commentary, we can deduce that the commandment is really for adult children. I mean, I think we also want to give this over. I mean, I learned it as a kid, is like, this is we're supposed to honor our parents, but it sounds like from this commentary that it's speaking specifically to adult children.
And so we're gonna both go into some personal sharing on different topics. I'm gonna share a moment right now for me, which is that I'm in a place right now. I have been for a while now. My mom passed away in 2016 from a long, long illness of not being able to care for herself, and my dad is now in that space too. In a nursing home in a skilled nursing facility in St. Paul, and cannot care for himself. And it's this really interesting place of like, am I doing my job right now? Like that I had caretakers for them, or that they are living in a facility. Whereas in other cultures, for example, I mean, I don't know if anybody read the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, which was also our theme for a couple of holidays ago at Lab Shul a few years ago. When I read this book, Atul Gawande talked about in certain cultures, including like the Chinese culture and what have you, the children, the youngest child is responsible for when the parent is not able to clothe themselves, to, all the things that are said here, to cover themselves, to bring them inside and outside. The youngest child drops whatever they're doing, whether they have a career or not, and they either come live with the parents or the parents come live with them, and they take care of them. And the other siblings, assuming there are siblings, they support financially the youngest sibling, and the parents. And it's this deep code of honor of, and our Western society has moved away from that. So there are a lot of feelings around that for me as well too. I have definitely written about this. I've written songs about it, and I thought maybe I would play a little piece of a song just so you can know like how how hard it was for me to grapple with what this was. So this is called Because You're Near Me. In my mind, you're standing tall. You weather sudden storms that never seem to fall. Like the safety that a lighthouse can provide, I find my way to reassurance in your eyes. The truth may be that you're 1,000 miles from me, but I need to hear your voice. I know it's so hard to believe. I take this opportunity to tell you what you mean to me. You know, I love it when you're near me. Please don't shy away from me. I'll be the mirror you won't see. I am who I am because you're near me. You've taught me patience helps you to survive. You showed me sometimes a soft voice calms the storms inside. And I'd give everything to keep you safe from pain. All I can do is try to explain that you're near me. I'll take this opportunity to tell you what you mean to me. You know, I love it when you're near me. Please don't shy away from me. I'll be the mirror you won't see. I am who I am because you're near me. So it goes on like that, but you can see what I'm wrestling with. The fact that I can't be there, I want to be there. And I'm grateful. I just want to say that I was able to perform that song for her live to get her actually to a concert in Chicago, and to dedicate this and have her really receive it around other people. And I wrote it for her, really for her birthday, for 1 year. It was like I didn't know what to get her. Like, what do you get somebody that is, not able to do like everything I could think of to get her for her birthday, she wasn't able to do. Like she couldn't go out and get a massage. She couldn't everything had to be like using your fingers or your hands or your bodies. And so I racked my brain, and then my partner was like, write her a song. I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So anyway, so Basya, I'm thinking this other side of this, right? So this other side of the Rambam, which is to honor, to not contradict, to fear and awe by not contradicting, by not sitting in their seat, by not calling them by their first name, by it's more of like honoring their
And
personality,
status.
their status, their legacy, and
The
all the
hierarchy. I think it's really acknowledging the hierarchy between children and parents, and that like parents take the seat, take the seat of the head of the table, and no one should even sit in that seat ever.
mm,
That's
no
part of
matter
how,
what, no matter what.
no matter what.
What
And I
does it
think
mean
also,
for you? Yeah.
I also think like, you're talking about the other side of that. I think the other side of parenting is also experiencing parents who weren't necessarily giving you the foundation that you felt like gave you the inherent respect for their roles as parents. And I think, I think as a singer-songwriter, when I first started writing music, I think my first album was called, ironically, Daddy's Pockets, which is, and the title song I'm about to play. But I also, just as I was thinking about this right now, I'm like, my name is Basya, which means daughter of God. And the name Basya is given to the first rebellious daughter that, we have in the Torah, who completely disregards their parents, wishes.
Mandate.
Pharaoh was like, throw all the kids in the water, and she's like, let me take a kid out of the water and adopt it, and grow him up in our house. How about that for rebellion? And so I think there's some part of me that actually like inherits that in the name and in the way that I'm daughter of God, that I see my the lineage. So I'll sing a quick song and then maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about my challenge as we wrap up. Down the streets we walked all Saturday, walked to the synagogue, our faces cold. Down the streets we walked all Saturday, singing in harmony about the soul. But he said, don't put your hands in daddy's pockets, for daddy's pockets you are getting old. Don't put your hands in daddy's pockets, for daddy's pockets you are getting old. 7 isn't time for dreams. 7 isn't time to be. 7 isn't time when you're almost a woman. 7 isn't time for dreams. 7 isn't time to be. 7 isn't time when you're almost a woman. Up, down and right and left and all around, here and there and everywhere, that's where we can be found. Up, down and right and left and all around, here and there and everywhere, that's where we can be found. Down the street. Whoa, but he said, don't put your hands in daddy's pockets, for daddy's pockets you are getting old.
My heart's breaking, listening to that.
And that's sort of the other side. And I think, if you speak to a psychologist, for example, they'll tell you that most people are in there and are recovering from the incredible damage to their psyches from their parents. And it's the house is the most dangerous place sometimes for so many people. And in some ways, how I think about it is that, like, the kaberet avicha v'yatinecha, and at least in my case, is that it's really hard if you can recover your psyche and reparent yourself in a way that you become the parents, then you can get to the place and you can treat your parents with some kind of respect, even with all the trauma that you experience. If you can do that in your home, every relationship that you'll have outside of the home will be successful. So if you can do that in your house, you can do that everywhere. So it's and the honor, respect. I love the definition, because it gives this tool. It's like, give them food, give them drink, make sure they're taken care of in a very basic way, walk them to the door, walk them back. But you don't have to do this heart and soul work. They're not telling you to do that heart and soul work, or love them, or hug them, or any of those things.
They tell you you're paying back a debt that you got life.
Yes.
You got life.
You got life.
Left.
That's true.
But you don't have to, you don't have to love.
And you can also take that yearning for the parenting to your own life and say, like, I mean, I know both for different reasons, Naomi and myself both really held that yearning. And I think this moment as we close up, like the yearning, what are you yearning for so much? I think the yearning where you feel the grief that's so palpable, the grief I had, I could not get away from the grief I had of not being a mother. And that grief also came from needing to repair some kind of parental relationship that I had. So I think as we finish up, I think, where is your grief?
Yeah.
For me, the grief was right there in needing to have an experience of love between parent and child. And if it wasn't between my parents and me, then it was going to be between me and the next generation, and how to do some repair in my life in that kind of way. And it's complex right now in Corona times, being a parent, and give them an iPad for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day if I'm working overtime, and then trying to be a parent, a single parent. Not easy. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm holding massive grief right now of my dad being in a skilled nursing facility and me not even being able to go there, being able to see him. He's in the twilight of his life, and this is not how I'm, according to these rules and according to all this, I don't feel like I'm fulfilling my responsibility. I feel like I'm failing the commandment at this point. And so I'm grieving. I'm grieving the inability to provide in the way that I think I'm supposed to, in
Or there's or
definitely
require
a
some commentary. How do we're supposed to? Why do we have so much of supposed to?
right.
Like
Right.
what's the new way to look at it? Like how do we?
Yeah. Well, I think, to me, I'm very curious about what your experience is, and Bassi and I are both bringing a lot of different experience to this, both with the sense of like grieving for yearning to become a mother. Like, I think that's unique to us, but for probably for different reasons, like psychologically. Um, but I think maybe what we could do is take a breath together here because this brings up an enormous amount. And I don't know, Basi, do you want to lead us in maybe like a healing nigun? And I'm going to lead us with some words, maybe over that or cascading afterwards of a loving kindness meditation to close off our time together. And we really appreciate everybody's participation, whether it's prone or active on the chat. And we would be really interested in hearing what you think. We're really easy to find. I'm Naomi at labshul.org and Basya is Basya at romamu.org, right?
Barechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Yoer Adonai panav elecha Yichuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha V'yasecha shalom.
Mm. So, a blessing of protection, a blessing of care, a blessing of grace and light shine on you, shine through you, shine out of you. Blessing of peace, whatever it is that you're wrestling with in these ancient tropes of parenting and honor and fear and awe and love. May you be blessed. Blessed. May you be blessed. Chesed. May you be blessed with compassion, with rachamim. May you be blessed with joy, with simcha. May you be blessed with peace.
Shalom, shalom, shalom. V'yasecha shalom. V'yasecha shalom.
Chag Sameach.
Chag
Happy
Sameach.
Shavuot.